All right, thank you everybody for joining us. We really appreciate you being with us tonight. I'm Julie Cruza, the Policy Director at Immigration Equality, and I'm joined here by Catherine Baxter, who is our Legislative Assistant at Immigration Equality, and we really appreciate you joining us tonight for the Lobby at Home UAFA Now training webinar. So again, I want to welcome everyone and just say we're so excited. We have 41 of you on this call and over 120 of you who have signed up for the Lobby at Home UAFA Now campaign. And I want to answer a couple questions before I get started on the how-tos of the presentation. So the questions I want to answer is why you and why now? So the why you question first. The answer to that question is that a face-to-face meeting with a family impacted by our discriminatory immigration laws, by the inability of gay and lesbian Americans to sponsor our foreign national spouses or partners for immigration. A face-to-face meeting with one of you who are constituents, with a member of Congress, is the best way to build support for the Uniting American Families Act. Absolutely, by far. So we have had meetings in D.C. with members of Congress that we have not been able to bring on as co-sponsors, and when they meet with the family back in the district at home, face-to-face, then they realize the importance of it, that it's a local issue, that it's a district issue, that there's real people behind it, and it's about families like them and their families, that they co-sponsor the bill. And for existing co-sponsors, we have built a lot of co-sponsors, say we bring someone on as a co-sponsor, but when they meet with a family in the district, they change from being co-sponsors to being champions, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that during the call. But in any case, we're asking you to join us in this campaign because you can achieve what Catherine and I cannot achieve as kind of special interest lobbyists on the Hill. And I wanted to just say if you're a family member or a friend or an ally, you can be a terrific voice too. Some of our best lobbyists have been moms and sisters and friends who have said, I don't want to lose my son or I don't want to lose my friend to another country. So thank you for joining us. And I just want to reiterate that Catherine and I could not do your jobs without you. And also, by you doing this, it makes our job much easier. If you go and have a meeting with your member of Congress and you remember to fill out the report form, which we're really going to ask you to fill out, then with Catherine and I go meet with that office on the Hill, we can say, hey, that member, your boss met with a constituent family from the district this August, and that will really make the staffer perk up and listen more to what we have to say. So I wanted to really thank you for participating. The other question is, why now? Why are we doing this campaign now? And the main reason is that, like kindergartners, members of Congress have a recess, and their recess is in the month of August. So they're out the whole month of August, which makes it much easier to schedule meetings with them, and you don't have to just catch them when they're back for a weekend or one holiday. And most of the time they should be in district. A lot of them are running for re-election, so they'll be out on the campaign trail in the district. Now, sometimes members of Congress do go on congressional delegations. They may go to Libya or somewhere. And so as you try to schedule your meetings, you'll find out from the scheduler when they're actually available in August. And I just wanted to mention that for Republicans, they'll probably be in district the first 3 weeks of August. The fourth week of August is the Republican convention. So not all members of Congress go to that, but a lot of them do. So with a Republican, you may want to try to schedule a meeting the first 3 weeks in August. Democrats don't have their convention until September, so they should be there for the whole month. So the next thing I wanted to do was introduce Cheryl and Val, who have lobbied with their representative and other members of Congress to share their story with us. So Cheryl and Val.
Hi, I'm Cheryl. And I'm Val. And we were back in Washington in June, late June, and we called up Immigration Equality and says, is there any way that they can help us go see our representatives? And so they set up meetings for us to go. We were kind of nervous and unsure about what we were going to be doing, but we went into the office, and Julie and Catherine prepped us pretty well and told us to go and talk to them and tell our story. And so we tried to tell our story and the difficulties we've had. Yes. Val's an Australian and I'm American, and so we play the B1 visa game and run back and forth. it was, we met with 3 different people. We met with 2 representatives from Oregon, one of which is a co-sponsor already. But I understand since our meeting day, she has signed on to support some other work that Immigration Equality is doing. So it was a great opportunity. It was scary, but we managed, and we did really well. We thought that we were. The big thing was for us to stay on point, and we tried to stay on point as much as we could. So it was a great meeting.
And we were really happy to do it.
Yes, we felt great afterwards. We were ready to take on the world. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cheryl and Belle, for sharing that. You guys did do a terrific job because the staffers from both of those 2 Oregon offices and the Tennessee office, too, have been in touch with us. And I'm hopeful we'll get a co-sponsor from one of those meetings that you had. Sometimes it happens the same day, and sometimes it just takes a little while. But thanks so much for joining the call. So to start the training on this call, I'm just going to give a little background information on the Uniting American Families Act, since that's what you're meeting with your member of Congress about. And first of all, I just want to explain what the Uniting American Families Act does. And what it does is it allows gay and lesbian Americans, LGBT Americans, to sponsor our foreign-born partners and spouses and our children for immigration and for green cards to the United States. And it does that by changing immigration laws by creating a new category called permanent partners. And permanent partners would have to demonstrate the bona fides of a lifelong committed relationship, pretty similarly to what straight Americans have to do when they currently sponsor their opposite-sex spouse for a green card here in the United States. The Uniting American Families Act currently has 138 co-sponsors in the House and 26 in the Senate. This is actually a really strong number. We have more co-sponsors in the House than any other immigration bill in Congress right now. And one thing I do want to note is sometimes people think this number is actually kind of small. It's not. It's actually quite large. And there's a lot of, just to explain it, there's a lot of members of Congress who vote for a bill even though they're not co-sponsors. So it's not like we have to get to 219 votes in the House and 60 in the Senate before we can move the bill. This is just a sign of the support it has, and you never get as many co-sponsors as you have committed votes. So that's another important reason to have the meeting is even if you don't get someone to co-sponsor, you want them to vote the right way when the bill moves. But we do want to continue building co-sponsors just for a key reason to show how important this bill has, how many members of Congress care about it, and that pushes leadership to actually move the bill. Just a few facts about people impacted by the Uniting American Families Act. So according to the 2010 census, there's 36,000 binational gay and lesbian families in the United States, and over 35% of these families, these couples, have children. These families are raising 17,000 children, and those are 17,000 children who are in danger of being separated from one of their parents at any time. The median age of adults in these families is 39. What this means is a lot of our families, the U.S. citizen is in the sandwich generation, that is that they have children. In order to stay with their children, they may have to move abroad, but they have elderly parents here in the United States that they need to take care of as well, and some of our families are facing that really horrible, impossible choice. And the final fact we have is that there are 25 countries that allow gay immigration. These countries are across the world, many countries in Europe, but also Asia, Africa, and South America, so really countries around the world. And most of them have laws like the Uniting American Families Act. Some of these countries have full gay marriage rights, and others just have laws like the Uniting American Families Act. So what that means is that for foreign nationals whose partners are from one of those countries, they can move to those countries if they have to leave the United States. But there's a lot of families where the foreign national partner is from a country that does not have gay immigration, and that means that they don't even have what for many of us is a really terrible option of having to be exiled and move abroad. They have nowhere to go unless they can find a third country that will take them in. So a little bit about the Uniting American Families Act. Sorry, here we go. Right now, the status of the bill is that it has been introduced in both the House and the Senate, and it's been referred to the Judiciary Committee in both chambers. Really good piece of news is that in this Congress, there's only one comprehensive immigration reform bill, and that's Senator Menendez's bill in the Senate. And that bill does include the Uniting American Families Act. So if a broad immigration reform bill moves, the marker bill that's out there is currently inclusive of the Uniting American Families Act. So the next thing I want to do is talk about how to set up meetings and carry out meetings now that I've given you a little bit of background information. And to do that, I'm actually going to take you to the website of the web page, or actually a whole website we've created for this campaign. This is our Immigration Equality Action Fund.org website that you can see right now. And the first screen that comes up when you go to it is our UAFA Now campaign. And if you click on that, you get to the main home page of the campaign. And I'm going to kind of walk through a lot of the materials for this campaign, but you'll be able to find them yourselves on the internet after this call. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is setting up a meeting with your member of Congress. So Cheryl and Val were lucky. Catherine and I set up their meetings for them. You're not so lucky. You have to set up your meetings for yourself. But it takes a little bit of work. Sometimes it can take really a fair amount of work, but it's well worth it for them to help us on the Uniting American Families Act, and also then you'll have a good relationship with your member of Congress that you can continue to build in the future. So the first thing you've got to do is find your member of Congress. And one thing you can do, as it mentions here, is you can simply call the Capitol switchboard, give them your address in D.C., and then find out who your two senators and who your representative in the House of Representatives are. But you can also do that by going to our website, and that's worth it, as you'll see, for a couple other reasons. So what I'm going to do is say that I'm someone who lives in San Francisco. So the way I find my member of Congress is to type in my zip code. And if you have your 4-digit addendum to your zip code, then you'll automatically go to your members of Congress, but I'm going to pretend I don't know that. And so what happens when I type in my zip code is I see who represents me in government, federal government. So first of all, it's the president. Oops, didn't mean to actually click on him. We're not targeting the president in this campaign, although we do have other campaigns where we do ask you to reach out and call or write the president. But I see here I also have two senators, Senator Feinstein and Senator Boxer. And then when it comes to my representative in the House of Representatives, I would note there's two choices, either Jackie Spear or Nancy Pelosi. And that's because in my zip code there are two representatives. So if I had the zip +4, I could enter that and find out my representative. But let's say I don't know that. Then all you have to do is enter your address. So I'm entering an address here. And then when I do that, the website tells me, okay, my congressperson is actually Nancy Pelosi. So then I'm going to request meetings with my representatives, my members of Congress. So a question I have now is, wow, I have 3 members of Congress. I have 2 senators and a member of the House of Representatives. Now, if you're really ambitious and really can spend some time on this this August, you could request meetings and hold meetings with all 3 offices. But if you feel you don't have that much time, and it does take a fair amount of time, as I said, to set up the meeting, you'd have to choose which member, 1 or 2, you want to reach out to. And so there's a couple ways you can make that choice. One choice you could make is to simply meet with your representative in the House of Representatives. They have a smaller district, so especially in a big state like California, they're more likely to be close by and be able to meet with you in person. But in the case of California, I'm going to show you how to look up whether your member of Congress is a co-sponsor. And it turns out that if I lived in this district, Nancy Pelosi is already a co-sponsor, and Senator Barbara Boxer also is already a co-sponsor, but Senator Dianne Feinstein is not a co-sponsor. So in that case, you might decide to meet with a non-co-sponsor to try to urge her to co-sponsor. So let's say I decide to meet with Senator Feinstein. So I go to her information. And this web page gives me a lot of background information on the senator, which can be useful. But what's important to me is to go to her contact information, which is that second tab. And notice, of course, the senator has an office in Washington, D.C. She also has an office close to me in San Francisco. And actually, most senators and even some representatives have multiple offices in the home states. And so if I pull all of them up, I notice that Senator Feinstein has 4 offices in California, but the one that came up first was the one that's closest to where I live, which is the San Francisco office. So I'm going to ask for a meeting with Senator Feinstein in the closest office, which is San Francisco. Now, some of you from big states, you may have to travel a little ways to get to the closest district office. But to request that meeting, I'm going to look up the phone number for that office, and I'm going to call, and I'm going to ask 2 things. The 2 things I'm going to ask are, first of all, how do I send in a request to meet with Senator Feinstein? And some members of Congress, they want the request to be emailed to a staff person, so you need to find out what that email address is. Some members of Congress want a fax. That used to be very common. Now that's becoming less common. And then a lot of members of Congress now recently have asked people to complete a web form requesting the meeting through the web. So you're going to have to call in, find out how they want to get the meeting request. The other thing you should ask when you call in is ask who is the scheduler in the San Francisco office for Senator Feinstein, because as soon as you send in the meeting request, you want to call the scheduler, make sure the scheduler got the meeting request and is working on scheduling the meeting. You do not want to have your request go into some kind of circular file or pile of paper that no one ever sees. And sometimes if you are setting up a meeting in the San Francisco office, not every office may have a scheduler, so they may say, well, it's our scheduler's in the Fresno office. So then you know you're going to have to call the Fresno number once you submit your request and ask there, but still tell them you want a meeting with the closest office. Okay, so after you find where and the contact information to set up your meeting, we're going to head back to the main page here. And as I said, you find your member of Congress, you call the local office, and then you send the meeting request. And just notice when you click here on the website to send a meeting request, what gets downloaded is a letter in Word. So you can just take this, save it, and just change the information to put in your personal information and the member of Congress you're reaching out to. So, and then if you have to submit it via web form rather than email, you could just cut and paste the information from the letter into the web form. And then the next most important thing is to follow up. So as soon as you send in that meeting request, call the scheduler, make sure they got it, and then you do need to be persistent. This is kind of the hardest part of the whole process. But you should call once or twice a week, and you should ask the scheduler, how's it going with scheduling a meeting for me with my senator, with Senator Feinstein. And remember to try to get a meeting with a member of Congress. What they may do is say, well, I don't know about the senator, but I can get you a meeting with the the legislative correspondent or somebody. I say, no, I really want to meet with my senator. And then if they just get back to you and say, you know what, Senator Feinstein is not going to be in San Francisco for the whole summer, or for the whole month of August, there's just absolutely no way to meet with her. Then ask to meet with the state director, or in the case of a U.S. representative, with the district director. And so start at the top and work your way down. You really want to meet with a top-level person that you can. So that's the information about setting up a meeting. The next thing you're going to have to do once you get a meeting scheduled is to prepare for your meeting. So there's a few things you might want to do to prepare for your meeting with your senator or representative, and that is to review the facts on the Uniting American Families Act. We have a web page with all those facts. They're actually the same facts that I presented on that PowerPoint earlier in the call. And then one other thing is you can find out, are there other local supporters of the Uniting American Families Act? And I just want to give a huge shout out to our outreach consultant, Tom Tierney, who has recruited over 2,500 faith leaders from all 50 states and from most of the 435 congressional districts to sign on a letter in support of the Uniting American Families Act. So if you wanted to, you could click here and get to that letter. And there's over 50 pages of signatories. And so what I could do is it's organized by state, and I could just go to California and see if there's local faith leaders that have signed on in support of the Uniting American Families Act. A lot of members of Congress know faith leaders in their district. Also, we have a lot of other supporters of the Uniting American Families Act that may be local to you. There's organizations which have endorsed the Uniting American Families Act, and you can go see the list of those organizations. And we have a lot of national organizations that have endorsed the Uniting American Families Act, but we also have quite a few local organizations. You can look and see, is there a local organization that's supported, or we also have a lot of city councils and state assemblies that have supported. So for example, I can see here that the city of San Francisco and actually the entire California state legislature have endorsed the Uniting American Families Act. That may seem obvious, but it's California and it's San Francisco, but you might be surprised some of the local endorsements we have from across the country. And finally, we have the Business Coalition for the Uniting American Families Act. These are businesses that have endorsed the Uniting American Families Act. And if I look at this list, I can see that in California, and of course Senator Feinstein is the senator for the entire state of California, we have Cisco Systems as a business, we have eBay as a business, and we have Intel. So we have a lot of high-tech industries out in California that have endorsed the Uniting American Families Act as well. So that's just a little information about the Uniting American Families Act locally that you can help prepare for your meeting. And then the third thing, and this is probably the most important thing on this list, is to see if your members of Congress are co-sponsors. And I kind of alluded to that at the beginning, that in choosing which member to meet with, you might want to look that up. So this is where you do that. So once I've found out who my members of Congress are, I can go look up my Senate co-sponsors, and I look at this list of co-sponsors. And I see that Senator Boxer from California is a co-sponsor. But I go down to the F's here and I see that Senator Feinstein is not on the list, so she's not a co-sponsor. And similarly, I can look up in the House of Representatives who are the co-sponsors, and if I go down to the P's, in my example, I can see that Nancy Pelosi is actually a co-sponsor. So that was how I would figure out in the first place which of my three members of Congress are co-sponsors or not. Prepared for the meeting, I'm going to look at how I need to conduct my meeting. And I wanted to mention that there's two types of meetings. I talked about this already. Your member of Congress may be a co-sponsor or may not be a co-sponsor. And what's critically important before you go into a meeting is to figure out what you want to ask your member of Congress for. You need to go into the meeting and ask what it is you want from the member of Congress and use that to start the meeting and use that to end the meeting. And if you don't do that, what will happen is that you will go in and you will have a very nice talk with your member of Congress. You'll chit-chat about this or that, and it'll be a great meeting because they're very good at doing that. And you'll walk out feeling happy because you really got to know your member of Congress. And then you also will come for a vote, and you'll be shocked because they're voting against it. And you're like, wow, I had a meeting with them. I thought they said they supported me. And that's because you didn't ask something specific enough. And I don't say you, but I have been on meetings like that, including with my own parents who were able to be gotten off topic very easily by their member of Congress. So what is the ask that you're making? If your member is not a co-sponsor, you should ask him or her to co-sponsor the Uniting American Families Act. And if your member is already a co-sponsor, I really want to emphasize that it's important still to meet with that member of Congress. So if your member is not a co-sponsor, the goal is to get them to become a co-sponsor. If your member is a co-sponsor, the goal is to get them to become a champion. And here I can give you an example, which is the Nancy Pelosi example. She's always been supportive on LGBT and immigration issues. She's always been a co-sponsor of the Uniting American Families Act. But it was after she met with Brad and Anthony and became very personally involved with them that she issued 2 different press releases on 2 occasions about why the Uniting American Families Act is so important. And she actually mentioned in those her constituents whom she had met with. She also did a conference call with all of our members and has done a variety, her office has done a variety of things behind the scenes for the bill and for couples in her district. So Brad and Anthony really took Nancy Pelosi from being a friend and a supporter to someone who really gets the issue and an absolute champion. So if your member of Congress is already a co-sponsor, what you want to ask them is to fight for the Uniting American Families Act to pass in 2013. We don't think any more substantive legislation is going to move this year besides some basic budgeting stuff that Congress has to do. So we're looking at 2013 with the new administration, which will be either a second Obama administration or a Romney administration, and then the new Congress, and to try to move the bill quickly. So you're asking your member of Congress to help make that happen. And also the second thing you're asking your co-sponsor member of Congress is to make sure that if any immigration bill moves in Congress, that our families are part of it. That the Uniting American Families Act is included in this bill. And if not, our families will be left behind. Usually major immigration bills happen about every 20 years. The last one to happen was in 1996. There's smaller ones in between. But our families cannot be left behind and continue to be torn apart for another generation. So you're asking your member of Congress to fight for UAFA to pass and move quickly in 2013, and if any immigration bill moves, that this be included. And this is something your member of Congress can definitely do. When they see an immigration reform bill is moving, they can go to leadership and they can say, hey, you want my vote? Include this bill. I have constituents who are impacted by this bill. And literally we have many members of Congress who have said that to leadership because they've met with constituents like you. The other thing you could also do is, if your members are already co-sponsors, ask them to make a video with you. We have a video campaign. And you can ask your member of Congress to make a video. And here, Kelly and Lucy from Connecticut have made a video about the Uniting American Families Act with Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut, who happens to be on the Judiciary Committee. And actually the same day that they made that video, Senator Blumenthal had a hearing with Janet Napolitano and pushed her really hard to help provide relief for our families now, even before immigration reform passes. So if you make that video, we can post that on this website as well, and we're hoping to get a good collection of videos. And you can make the video also without your member of Congress. Lots of families have done that as well, and we encourage you to do that. So what I want to do is look at a meeting outline. How do you actually carry out your meeting? So we've talked about what you ask for. So you walk in the room, and the first thing it says there is the ask. But of course, you want to do an introduction, introduce yourself, say hello to them. I showed you where you can get information on Senator Feinstein. So maybe you went to the same college or you have some other connection. If you do have something in common, you do want to make that personal connection. But as I said, make the connection, talk a little bit about it, but then switch gears to what the meeting's actually about, so you make sure you can get to the substance before a member of Congress has to leave. So the first thing you want to do is say, I am here, Senator Feinstein, to ask you to co-sponsor the Uniting American Families Act. And the next thing, and actually the most important thing you're going to do in this meeting, is to tell your story. If you go and have this meeting and you tell your story and you talk to your member of Congress and they see your face and they are impacted by the emotional impact of your story, then you will have had a successful meeting. When this comes up for vote, we need them to have a face and a story in their mind of someone like you that has a family just like they do, and all you want is to keep your family together. So I just want to reiterate that we do want you to put in the ask, but the most important thing is to tell your story. And we recommend you tell your story kind of just in 3 parts, chronologically simple. But tell them about your relationship. Tell them that you are in love, you fell in love, and you've been together for 1, 3, 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it's been. And then talk about your struggle to stay together. How have you been able to stay together? So you might say, you know, my partner's here on a student visa, but it's getting really tough. Of course, he or she can't work, so it's financially challenging. And in any case, when he or she graduates, that visa is going to run out. So, and then you want to end the story with what the future holds. This is your member of Congress. They represent you. And what you want is to do what every American wants to do, which is build a life here, live the American dream here. And you tell them, we're a committed family. We want to plan for the future. Talk about your plans for the future. I want to continue my career. We want to buy a house. We want to have children. But how can we do that when our future is so unstable? And I have a great career, but how can I keep advancing in that if I keep thinking I may have to move abroad? So again, those are kind of the key components. And you do want to get at the emotion of the story. You want to talk about how much you love each other and how hard it is to have to fight so hard to stay together and how difficult the prospect of possible separation is for you, so that your member of Congress can definitely relate to that. As you tell your story, you want to reinforce that with talking points. And we have 3 main talking points. And we have tested these talking points, and they are really effective. They're effective with Democrats and with Republicans. So they're good for any meeting that you have. And the first one is one that I've probably used already on this call, which is, and just to take a step back, to use these talking points, kind of try to weave them into your story. And if the member of Congress starts changing the subject, you can change the subject back by using one of these talking points. So the member of Congress says, well, you know, I was supportive of the DREAM Act, and you say, well, that's great, and I appreciate that support, and I'm here to meet with you because I'm an American, and I shouldn't have to choose between my family and my country. And you can tie that into your story, as I pointed out before. Then the second talking point is that forcing LGBT Americans into exile in order to stay with their family, it doesn't just hurt LGBT people. It hurts straight people too. It hurts our families. It hurts our businesses. It hurts our communities. It hurts our country. And so you want to tell your story and explain that. You have a job teaching at a local school. You need to take care of your parents. You have a sick mother who relies on your care. You volunteer at your local church. You're a member of the military and you serve your country. So if you're forced out of this country, it won't just hurt you. It'll hurt the broader community as well. And the final talking point is that our families cannot be left behind. We've got to be included in any immigration reform legislation. And, you know, you can't wait. There's families that are facing separation right now. And if you're facing that prospect now or next year or the year after, you can't wait for Congress to act in 10 years. We need relief now. So those are the 3 talking points that are good to weave in to the meeting and into your story. Then when you end your meeting, just end by repeating your ask. So you end the meeting by saying, Senator Feinstein, again, I'm here to ask you, will you co-sponsor the Uniting American Families Act? Or if you meet with Senator Boxer, you could say, Senator Boxer, I'm here to ask, will you push hard for the Uniting American Families Act to pass in 2013? And will you push hard to make sure we're included in any immigration reform bill? And notice I left a little silence after those questions. One mistake that we sometimes make is if there's silence in the meeting is to say, ooh, there's silence, this isn't good, this isn't going well, let me fill it. And you start telling your story a little more, or even worse, you start rambling and getting off topic. It's good to have silence. Say, Senator Feinstein, will you co-sponsor the Uniting American Families Act? And if she doesn't respond, you just stay quiet too until eventually there's some answer. And whatever answer you get is really important for us to know. That's very helpful for us. And also, if you leave silence and time for conversation, you're going to hear about your members of Congress concerns. If they're not co-sponsoring, why are they not co-sponsoring? What are their concerns about the bill? What are their questions about the bill? And that's absolutely critical information for us to know. So the next thing we want to ask you to do, the final thing we want to ask you to do is report back from your meeting. This is totally crucial for our work. And we have a meeting report form. We try to keep it really simple. But the key questions we have is if your member of Congress is not a co-sponsor, will he or she co-sponsor? What did he or she say when you said, will you co-sponsor the Uniting American Families Act? And we have yes and no and maybe. The answer probably most of the time is maybe. The member of Congress may say, I really need to look at the text of the bill, which is totally reasonable. And if you're meeting with staff instead of the member of Congress, they have to say, well, I have to ask my boss. I can't give you an answer right now, which is also reasonable. But then you have to say, okay, so when can I follow up? Can I give you a call next week? Can I call you in 2 weeks? And we really need you to make that follow-up call. But what's really critical here is that you also put what is the concern your member of Congress has. Your member of Congress may say, I'm not sure if I can co-sponsor right now because I'm not co-sponsoring any immigration bills, or I'm not sure I can co-sponsor right now because I'm concerned about fraud in the immigration system, or or I don't co-sponsor any bills until I know that they're about to move. Whatever that reason is, if you can tell us that, then that helps us when we go to the Hill and we say, hey, I know your boss said she had concerns about fraud. Let me tell you about the really strong anti-fraud provisions in the Uniting American Families Act. So it helps us become much more successful advocates for you when we get that information. And then, of course, if your member is already a co-sponsor, did he or she agree to do anything else, and what did he or she say? And then we can go to the Hill and say, hey, your boss agreed to do this. And they'll say, oh, really? I didn't know that. They're often quite surprised with their boss's promise. So we can't make your member of Congress follow through unless we know what they committed to. And again, what questions or key concerns did they raise? And any other key points that came out of the meeting. For example, you say, hey, when I talked about this, that really seemed to impact them. When I talked about that, that seemed to really turn them off. Those are key things for us to get to know members of Congress. And finally, if you have suggestions for next steps for us to do to engage your member of Congress, say, hey, they seem to want to know more information about this or that. And then finally, we do ask you to follow up with your member of Congress. Are you going to call a staff person? Are you going to email a staff person? So, for example, if you're there with your member of Congress, say, when can I follow up? And they'll probably say, hey, you can call the staff person in a few weeks. And then you should try to remember, you should definitely remember to do that. So that is our website, and we hope it's really useful for you in setting up and carrying out your meeting. And but if you have further questions, in addition to the chat questions you've been submitting right now, we have an email, uafanow@immigrationequality.org, and email that, and Catherine will respond to your questions. Finally, I just want to point out at the bottom of all of the pages on this campaign website, we have the home page, which gets you back to the original page on the website. We also have an index, so there's a lot of pages on this website. So if you say, oh, I want to look at my co-sponsor, I can't figure out how to get there, you could go to the index and say, oh, here's the UAFA co-sponsors page. Cool, that's what I wanted to look at. In addition, at the bottom of each page on the website, we have FAQs, so maybe before you send that email to Catherine at uafanow@immigrationequality.org, you could look at the FAQs and see if those answer your question. And then all of you have already signed up for the campaign, and we appreciate it, but you can also get to the sign-up form and give that to your friends. All right, so I'm just going to say a few more things about meeting with your member of Congress, and then take any additional questions you have. So the first thing I wanted to say is that Cheryl and Val were excellent lobbyists, just absolutely excellent, but they said they got nervous, and you do get nervous. So just one thing is it's okay to get nervous. It's okay to get flustered. And if you're feeling off track and just feeling a little overwhelmed, you can say, wow, sorry, I'm really nervous. This is kind of hard for me to do. Or say, wow, I've kind of lost my thoughts. I'm going to look at my notes really quickly here. So just if you're worried about getting nervous, you can get nervous. That's okay. Happens all the time. A few things we recommend not to do is don't talk, I think I've talked about this, don't talk about irrelevant topics. So if you spend the time talking about football or another bill or how your member of Congress helped repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that's all time you're spending not talking about your story, which is the most important thing, and not asking them for the specific help we need. And another thing that we bring up is that a lot of members of Congress, they actually know a fair amount about immigration, so they might want to talk to you about the F visa and the J visa and the E visa, and you probably don't mind talking about that because that's a big part of your life, trying to find all those visas. But that can really be a time suck and take the meeting off track. So try to circle back to your main talking points in your story and say, oh, thanks, but the main reason I'm really here right now is to ask you to help my family by co-sponsoring the Uniting American Families Act. So try not to get too far, let them take you too far off track. And that is actually it for all of my advice and suggestions. So I am going to see if Catherine has questions here. And I see she has sent me good ones. So the first question someone asked, or maybe more than one of you asked, is it risky to take your partner if they are here illegally? I'm pretty sure they would do a background check before letting you in the office, so maybe I have to leave him at home. So first of all, that's an excellent question. And if you are concerned about whether you should take your partner to the meeting, we really urge you, Catherine and I are not lawyers, we really urge you to call our legal team. The best way to do that is to go to immigrationequality.org and fill out the Contact Us form. Someone will actually get back to you most quickly if you do that and you fill it out pretty fully. Or you can call our hotline, our legal hotline at 212-714-2904, and that number is also on our website. But consult with a lawyer before you decide if your partner is undocumented, whether to take him or her to a meeting. You can also email us at UAFA now at immigrationequality.org. And there are, again, take those questions to our legal team if you have any legal concerns. A related question is it helpful to bring your partner if they don't speak fluent English? If they can only contribute a small portion of the conversation, is that okay? That's absolutely fine. And a lot of couples try to figure out, are we going to do this, is the American going to speak? Sometimes it's the foreign national that speaks a little more. We had a foreign national who spoke with Senator Feinstein in an in-person meeting in Minneapolis, and the American partner couldn't make it because he was at work. And then a lot of times it's really nice if you go as a couple, and that shows that you really are a family. And sometimes you finish each other's sentences. I mean, don't interrupt each other and argue with each other. But that really shows that you guys are a family and that you're in this together and you're trying to be together. So if your partner can only speak a little bit of English, they can come with you and they can still be part of your family. So that's, again, a choice that you guys can make. A final thing I want to mention on that front is we're looking at everybody who registered for these calls and for the campaign. And if we do have someone else from your same district who's signed up, we are going to email you so you can choose to go to the meeting together if you wish. Okay, we've got a question. A good question is, how do you speak with a representative who you know will probably be opposed? Well, the best way to speak to that member is to tell your story and to say, I'm your constituent, I'm an American, I deserve to live here, I deserve, and especially if you're, sometimes our opposition is they are very patriotic people and say, I'm American, I'm from this country, I shouldn't be forced to live abroad just to live with my family. And say, I want you as my member of Congress to support me and my ability to live with my family in your district. This is where I want to be. I want to be in your district. I want to be in your state. And I want your support for my right to be able to stay here. So I'm asking you to support and to co-sponsor the Uniting American Families Act. So really the great thing about how we set up this meeting is it works for everybody. It works for members of Congress who are not our best friends, and it works for members of Congress who are our very close friends, because in both cases, that member of Congress who may be opposed and may tell you, you know, I'm not going to vote with you and I'm not going to co-sponsor your bill, when the day comes, I had a meeting recently with a member of Congress who everybody was surprised voted for the Employment Non-Discrimination Act for gays and lesbians. This was a pretty far-right Republican member of Congress, and the staffer told me, you know, my boss said when the vote came, he said, I don't want to be like those people in the 1960s that voted the wrong way just because they wanted to vote with their party and voted the wrong way as civil rights. I want to be able to sleep at night. So if that member of Congress that says they're not going to vote with us has your face in their mind when the vote actually comes, that could really change their mind. And so it's all the more important to do these meetings. So I have a last question here, which is any advice on what to wear and etiquette. So on what to wear, I mean, I usually dress kind of business-like. And one of the reasons I do that is it makes me feel empowered. You could dress business casual. I wouldn't dress much more casually than that. And then in terms of etiquette, just be polite, you know, and treat your member of Congress, of course, how you would want to be treated, which is politely. And if you have a disagreement, have it be a polite disagreement. If they say, you know, I'm not going to support your bill, say, well, I hope you change your mind, you know, because, you know, you live here, I live here, and I want to live here with my family just the way you do. So I hope you can change your mind and support us. All right, and that was the last question. So that's the end of the meeting. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you all for agreeing to be part of the campaign. But thank you again so much for joining the call and for joining this campaign. Have a great night.
Thank you. Please stand by.